order at 7:05 because we got a quorum. So, for some reason, and I'm not sure, I thought we gave Bill the stuff last time. Didn't you, Rick, you and I sit there with an agenda and write it out and give it to Bill? Yeah, and then I just,
So.
yesterday or Friday, late, because I didn't look at emails till Sunday, I see a thing that says, hey, there's no, do you have the agenda? And I'm like, no, we gave it to Bill. So I'm not sure. The meeting's warned, you know, we warned the meetings ahead of time that we're meeting. So I'm not, right, I'm not concerned about that.
Okay.
So on the agenda, the first thing is gonna be the minutes of our last meeting. So do people have copies of the minutes of the last meeting? Okay. So the other thing is, the minutes don't get sent out to you individually anymore. The minutes, for some reason, go to your Wyndham Central email address. Who checks your Wyndham Central email
I didn't
address?
see it on that email either.
You check it, I know. Yeah, it was there.
Was it there?
Yeah,
Alright, I got a lot of other stuff, but I didn't get that.
okay. And if not, too, the minutes also show up on the Wyndham Central website. Do I have one I can send that way? I do. Merry Christmas. So why don't everybody take a look at the agenda, and we'll put, I'll take a look, I'm sorry, at the minutes, and we'll put off the minutes till the end of the meeting, if that's okay with people. So the next thing is, we talked to Anita about a proposal at the last couple meetings, and we kind of came to agreement. So she has written up a letter of agreement, which is dated November 17th through February, November 2017 through February 2018. And for services for communications for the RV, USD, board, WCSU, now through the end of February, referencing proposal and scope of work submitted to the board dated November 7th, 2017. That was when we met in Wardsboro. Upon initiation through the end of February, services to begin immediately upon approval of contract or letter of agreement with the board. Any continuation to be determined by new agreement after March 1st. It's $580 flat fee for defined scope of work, to be billed and payable upon invoices submitted 50% December 15th and balance February 28th. Other fees included, not included, special projects, work performed according to a set budget per project on ad hoc basis with a not to exceed limit, for example, preparation and distribution of a special report or document. I know for the study committee, Anita you did our brochure.
I did brochures.
So like that would be, if we want to do a brochure on you know, the difference between voting by Australian ballot and voting from the floor, that we would come to an agreement, and she would say, okay, this is what I think you guys are looking for, and this is what the cost would be. Transportation travel costs, no local travel costs, billable only for travel to areas outside of Dover and Wardsboro when authorized by the board. I don't think you had any of that.
No, but in case you need to send me somewhere.
So if you want to go to
Demand.
Montpelier to see what's really going on, right? Upon written notice by either party for non-compliance with payment for work complete and expenses incurred at the date of termination. So Anita had sent this around, and I sent it to every board member by email, not your Wyndham Central email. And I got only a response from Laura. She said it looked good. She said it was a bargain or something, I think you said. So that's nice for you.
You said little numbers.
Yeah, so, I told Anita, because she needed to get her December meetings into the Bucketville News, I said, go ahead and we'll vote on it today, but I don't see any reason why we can't approve this, so, if you guys wanna approve it, we can. If you don't wanna approve it, that's fine, and I'll just cover Anita for the work she's done out of my pocket so far. And Rick will help me pay for it, cause he's got more money than me.
That's $6.
Okay, I got 12, so we're good. So, anybody want to make a motion? Nobody wants to make a motion?
I make a motion that I should have written this, pay Anita.
Yeah, have the chair sign the contract with,
Have the chair sign the contract with Anita.
perfect. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion?
Anita, thank you for putting that together, and I do think it is quite a bargain, so.
Well, I'm ready to give you an update of what I've done so far.
Let's sign the contract first.
Sign the contract first, and I'll tell you what I did.
Okay,
One quick thing, you did direct line of contact, we talked about that a little bit,
yeah,
so.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
I did.
Laura Sedalia. And,
You're okay with that?
and then if I'm not around, she'll go to Rick
Okay.
as vice chair. Any other questions?
What's that?
You got an issue with that?
No issue.
Yeah, just wanna clarify
I
that.
don't want to move in that line. No.
Okay, so is there any more discussion?
No, sounds great, thank you.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Today's not the 14th, today's the 20.
20th.
Yep, that's fine. Do you want to just sign one for me and you can have the other one? Okay, so then you want to give us a quick update?
I will.
Choose.
So, right after the last meeting, I designed a new blog site, and I called it River Valley School District without the word unified, because it was a little too long, so I figured we could get away with that. On the blog site, I was gonna do RVUSD, but I Googled that, and that acronym stands for something else entirely, so I didn't wanna do that. So the blog site is up, it's already multiple pages. The homepage will always be the same with the date of the next meeting and so forth. So if you haven't had a chance to browse it, you might want to just click through the pages really quick. There's a lot of pages, but there's not a lot of depth to them yet. They're still pretty short pages. The most important page on there right now is the FAQ page. I wrote 2 questions and answered them myself. But in your travels, as you're talking to people in your towns or your constituents, Laura, or wherever you are, if somebody asks you a question, what's going on, make a note of it and write it down, like even briefly, and email it to me, and I'll add it to the FAQ. Because I don't really have a way to contact people individually to get questions, but it's on the blog site. There's a whole page, how to ask a question. In several places it says ask a question, make a comment, feedback welcome. So anybody looking at the site cannot help but see that there are places to respond. So after I did that, I sent out a notice to the schools. Tammy and Bates and Matt both got that, and they're updating their school websites. I did update the website for the town of Wardsboro, since I do that one myself. I asked Andy over down the hill to update the Dover town website, but I also noticed that I couldn't find your board, this board listed on the Dover town website anywhere. So I didn't want to nudge too hard, but oops, if you
So I
can.
think, I think,
I
Jeanette.
couldn't find it, maybe I just wasn't looking in the right
Yeah.
place.
It probably isn't there. I'll have Jeanette.
Yeah, because they have that whole menu of
Right.
boards and agencies, and I couldn't find this particular board. So I got that done, and then I sent out notices about the new blog site and the dates, the regularly scheduled meetings and everything to the Commons, the Reformer, the Bucketville News, and so on and so forth. I was going to post to Front Porch Forum, but they banned me last year for being a pest, for posting too much Act 46 stuff. They said I could only put stuff on the calendar, so I gotta talk to them. And I can't post to Dover, because they won't give me a Dover account. They'll only give me a Wardsboro, Jamaica account. So I have to figure out a way to get like a fake Dover account or something. I don't wanna trouble you, Laura.
Well, if you send it to me with the subject line that says post this on Front Porch Forum,
You have a second to do that?
I can do it. But
All
I mean,
right,
it will-
because they won't let me have 2 accounts to post to the Dover one. They'll let me post to Wardsboro, Jamaica. So, and I gotta work out with them why they banned me anyway.
You're a bad influence. Those front
I
porches.
just told them I was just doing my job. So those are the updates so far. I had a thought that after the holidays and maybe after the Super Bowl, that there might be some interest before town meeting, so that puts it like February somewhere, to have a couple of off-hours meetings, one in Dover, one in Wardsboro, where you sort of give the pre-town meeting update of what the group's done so far and all of that. And maybe if they're a Saturday morning, somewhere neutral, or might have to have 2, one in each town if people won't go up and over the hill. So one here, one there.
We're gonna talk about that in a little bit too.
Yeah, and my other thought is that maybe people don't like coming to the school for meetings. Maybe they need to be in a coffee shop or a church or some other place, like we had those ones at Town Hall, instead of at the schools when we were doing the Act 46 stuff. So those are my thoughts. Anything from you that you want me to keep going on or do next?
Anybody? I don't think anything special because we're gonna be a little bit. But I think, policies, you know, one of the things we agreed to, and we were gonna approve policies tonight, but I looked at some notes, and we agreed that if we voted to post them in one building, we would vote on them, so that we made sure, and they've been posted for a couple months now, so we'll probably do that at the next Wardsboro meeting, which
Okay.
will be on the 6th of December, no, whatever the next meeting
It's
is.
December 4th.
4th, okay. So I think, you know, that'll be important to let people know.
Are those available to me to post on the website?
Yes. Ricky, where do you post yours? You said
We
you
got
put
posted
them
a
out
few
about
different
10
places.
different places.
I've posted them long enough so that they're all gone.
Oh, some people took them down?
Well, they were.
Okay, let me get them sent to you.
Yeah, and you can either
Oh, can
use
you
my,
send them to
Yeah,
her?
I have.
my
Okay.
email or my WCSU email. There's been no public comments on the WCSU email that I check at least once a day, sometimes twice a day. Just feedback from the principals and Laura and other people, so there hasn't been any incoming yet
Okay.
on that site. And the only other thing I was gonna do this week is write press releases, sort of public service announcements really, that the blog exists, so just announcing in little blurbs and little articles, and Bucketville News is gonna carry that in January, there'll be a little article.
Cool.
So,
Anybody else? Anything?
Thank you for getting that together so quickly.
Yeah, I appreciate
yeah,
it.
it's, degree of difficulty is this big, time consumption is this big, it's one of those things that, not hard, just you have to sit there and suck away at it till you get everything linked and cross-linked. I did send it to Kevin Burke to link to the main WCSU site. All the minutes to date are on there, the video from last meeting is already on there, so all that is up to date.
Yeah, and those of you that haven't, if you look at the Wyndham Central site under school boards, they have a school board just for, thank you. They have a school board just for, what's that one? They do have a school board for West River, or for river valleys in the West River. So, you know, you got like the Dover board and the Wardsboro board, and you got Newfane and Newbrook, and so our boards are there, and they do post the minutes and the connections to his videos.
All right, yeah, well, that's where I've been getting them from, because they're not sent to me as a document, so I've just been linking to their I've been taking their PDFs, uploading them to a different drive on Google Drive, and then linking to that. So in case their website is down or something, it's on my Google Drive.
Yeah, because also on the Wyndham Central, we have a link to all the videos too.
Right, I have that.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
I already, well, there was only one so far, and that's on there. And
Okay.
it doesn't go to the YouTube site, it goes to the BCTV site.
Cool. Maybe they'll give us a kickback because of all the views they'll get from us.
I can put their logo on there.
I'm gonna see if they'll pay you for it.
Okay. Well, anyway, thanks, and anything in between meetings that you want me to jump on, just let me know right away, I'll do it.
Okay, any other questions or comments for Anita? Thank you.
Thank you
My
very much.
pleasure.
We'll see you in Wardsboro in a few days.
Yes, I might be going to Maine, but it's an if still, but if I miss the next meeting, I'll catch up with you, hours or something.
Cool. So, I was gonna, at the last meeting we talked, so, if you remember, the West River group hired and paid a lot of money to VSBA to come down and do a training. And I went through the training for a little bit. I went through both days of training with them, and I didn't participate in some stuff because it was specific to what they were doing. So, I took some of that training stuff back, and I asked Peter, emailed me, they did a PowerPoint. So what I wanted to do was, I wanted to give you guys, I messed this up, so I gotta do this right. So, pass that whole section, set down to Mr. Orman. So, I don't know, and one of the things that came up is some people are new to boards. And I know Dwight, you were new last year, but did you go to the VSBA essential work of a school board? I got one copy for you folks out there if you want. But this was, what they did was, they kind of took their essential work of school boards and put the word transitional in front, so we got this really pretty looking thing. And this was part of the program for the West River Group. As you see, it says West River Modified Union. And I figured since they're getting more money from the grant than we are, I would steal their stuff and make copies of it for us. So they had a nice PowerPoint. So I don't have a nice PowerPoint because I'm not that computer literate. But one of the things is they were working on is strategic vision development. And so this was from the second program they did. They did it on the 30th of October, and then they did a class, they done a presentation on the 23rd. And the 23rd, they kind of all put sticky notes up and got a strategic vision. We worked on a mission statement ahead of time, so we're a little bit ahead of them. So I just thought I'd throw out that this was what they were working on, and you may want to just, I only copied the one page, I didn't get both sides. So, I mean, theirs is a little bit more in-depth than ours, but I just thought that people had some interest. So the next page is essential work of school boards. So I think if you go to that, you know, these are the 6 things that we should be doing. So engage the community, establish a vision. And a lot of that was kind of done for us when we did the study, because we put down a vision in the study and we try to engage the community through Anita and through other sites. So I think now we want to still keep the community engaged as we move forward, and we're doing that with Anita again, and also with the guy behind the camera that doesn't talk unless you really catch him off guard at like a Wyndham Central meeting. The next thing was adopt policy, and you know the West River Group is putting it off until June, but we did a lot of the easy policies, so we have a few that we need to put off until we kind of have some time, like the transportation and the attendance or which building you attend, and a couple other ones that we've adopted, but they'll still have to be updated because they talk about the administrator and who the contact people are in the buildings, and you know, we'll have to deal with that after we kind of get settled more and know what we're gonna have for staff. Board and superintendent partnership, we're gonna talk about that a little bit. Develop a budget and assure financial oversight. We don't have to worry about that till sometime. They have it till June, but I don't think we really need to start until after summer, maybe next fall. But because it's gonna be the first one, it's something we may wanna start talking about in June to get some ideas. Monitor progress. We really can't monitor progress until we have something going. And then effective and ethical operations, and we'll talk about that really briefly. So, Carrie, do you ever go to the essentials of the school board training?
Not had conflict with work.
Okay. Did you ever go to any of those in the past? The school essential work of the school board, you know, the round?
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. And you haven't gone, right? And this is your first time serving. And you, again, you didn't go last year.
I wasn't on the board last year, I don't think. It just
Well, in March,
I
right?
came in late, yeah.
Okay, so it's usually, if you can go to them, so I thought we'd just talk about some of the stuff briefly, because we do have some people that are fairly new to boards, and then we have some people that are really old. But you and me. So engage community, build a vision. That's one of the things the school board is supposed to do. So partner with your community, ask them, you need them in order to move forward, because we need their support, not only through the budget, but also support on wherever we go and how we move down. Questions asked, what did they want? What do we want our students to know, and what do we want our students to be able to do? Inform, share educational experts' insights, and what changes do we need to better serve students, and create vision reflects the community aspirations and best practices as identified by the administrator. So if you go to the next page, the board, superintendent, and principal. So the board's job is to give vision, policy, resources, and accountability to the superintendent. The superintendent is your system leader and CEO for the district, accountable to the board. And then the principal's actually supposed to now report to the superintendent, who is the educational leader for the school, accountable to the superintendent. So the principal then goes back to the superintendent, who then the superintendent comes back and reports to us. And this is important to know because I don't know if you guys have ever, I don't know if you remember, but they did this skit when they did this class for us a long time ago. And it was a really cool skit where somebody played a parent, somebody played a school board member, and the parent comes up and says, you know, that gym teacher made my kid sit on the bench at the basketball game last week. And as a board member, you're supposed to say, well, I'll take care of that at the next board meeting. We'll be having a talk with that teacher. So what's wrong with that? You know, we don't supervise the staff, we don't supervise the principal, that's the superintendent. If we have an issue, we're supposed to tell the parent, here's your chain of command. You go to the person you're having an issue with, you go to the principal, you go to the superintendent. If you don't get satisfaction, then you can come to us. And everybody knows that we're a quasi-judicial. Carrie knows all about quasi-judicial and about judicial, full judicial. So what would happen is if we get too involved and then the parent doesn't get satisfaction and the superintendent and the parent comes, you know, we're supposed to make our decision based on what's presented to us at the meeting. So if we've got prior knowledge because we got ourselves involved, then we really have to pull ourselves away from the hearing. So it basically makes the board that many less people who've gotten involved, and it makes it more difficult. So it's just real important to make sure that you don't get yourself involved in areas we're not supposed to be.
And we're a board, we're not a bunch of board members.
Right.
We make
We act
decisions
as a board.
not as individual members.
And I think that's on this next one too. Assure that school board guidelines for lawful and ethical operations. Ensure schools are well run but do not operate the schools. Have no legal powers outside the board, which is kind of where Rick was going. So I got a real kick the other day. I saw somebody who's got a new position, and they were were like holding court, and they were like, well, I'll make sure this and this and that happens. I'm thinking to myself, you're one of a board of 5 to 8 people. You got to convince everybody else. Must maintain the confidentiality of executive sessions, and that's really important because executive sessions usually deal. Oh, are you missing a page? Oh, well, okay, I'm sorry. And must maintain the confidentiality of executive session. Executive session can only be certain issues like student issues and contractual issues and staff and personnel. And you don't want to, if we were talking about Matt Martin and, we were talking about, we're going to give him $1 million raise, we don't want to do that and then tell everybody outside until, Matt gets to tell his wife, maybe. Must avoid conflict of interest or perception. And remember to, don't come in with preconceived notions when you're asked to make decisions. I mean, we're supposed to listen to what's presented to us and then make a decision. And should recognize the validity of board decisions even if you don't agree with them. And I don't know about Rick, but for the first several years I was on the board, I was on the wrong end of a lot of 4-to-1 decisions. But you should support the board. There's nothing worse than having a 3-to-4 vote or something, and then having a 4-to-2 vote, and then having everybody kind of saying, "Oh, I wouldn't have done that." And, once a decision's made, we hope that the board stands behind the decision. So, framing the transition activities. Oh, I'm sorry. There's also a board member. I couldn't find it in the. I couldn't find it online, but there is a form that VSBA puts out on school boards that they recommend you sign, and it's not a conflict of interest. It's
I think it is board member conflict of interest.
was it conflict
Yeah.
of interest? I thought they called it something else. Yeah, I can't.
This is a standard
Code of
policy too.
ethics.
Code of ethics, thank you. Where'd you find that? Oh, there you go, I'm sorry. I know I'd seen it somewhere. So code of ethics, and that's something that we may want to decide to vote on, thank you. You got the form?
That's it.
Okay. So I'll try to get that
On their website.
next meeting. So, one of the things is framing the transitional activities. So some of the things we talked about was enhanced learning opportunities. That was one of the big reasons to do this. So how can this work be done in a way that will lead to enhanced learning opportunity for our students? Efficient operations, how do we lead to more efficient operations? And future outlook, is accomplishing this task in a particular way likely to impede either number one or number two? So one of the things is, as a school board, you always got to remember that when you make a decision, first question is, what's the law say? Second question is, what does our policy say? Then after that, we have to make a decision. So always look into, when you make a decision, what does the law say? What does our policy say? And then, how is it going to affect student learning, and how is it going to lead to more efficient operations? So moving right along, understanding the task, roles, and timing. So they're saying within 90 days of the organizational meeting, what are we going to do? What are we going to do within 6 months? And what do we have to do prior to operation? So I don't know if that's really where our school board is. I thought we were a little bit more to the right in that one picture. I'm not sure. So the first 90 days, whole board retreat to provide training on board governance. So I was trying to cover that tonight in a very brief, quickly run little session. We elect a chair, which we did. That's me and Rick. Establish chain of command and communication norms. So I think we kind of understand, first thing is if a parent comes to you with something, a complaint about an issue, we know where things go. They go to the person they're complaining about first, and if they're not happy, to the principal and the superintendent, and then they come to us. I think during this growing period, there's going to be a lot of people coming to us with stuff, and we just need to make sure we understand that we can't promise anybody anything. All we can promise is that if they can't make it, we can bring that up for them, or we can bring it up at a meeting. But don't ever guarantee anybody or tell anybody you'll make sure something happens, because unless you got 4 other people in your pocket, when it comes to a meeting, it may not happen. Adopt a code of ethics, which we talked about, and appoint members to the negotiations council. That's something we haven't done, and that's something we should probably talk about, so we'll make sure we get to that in the code of ethics at a future meeting.
What do they need in negotiations?
So the negotiations council is the people that negotiate with the union for,
Oh, okay.
and what we have done on that is, remember the last meeting in Wardsboro, or 2 meetings ago in Wardsboro, we signed a letter sent to the union telling them we're ready to negotiate. So we're good on that. In the first 6 months, next page, you establish a strategic vision. They were mud, and I thought they were an M-U-U-E-D, but we should look at a strategic vision, strategic plans. They call them create learning groups to help build understanding of current state among board members. We call them committees. She was very strong about not being committees, but your learning groups, because we're learning. I think it's Tato. So school board roles and responsibilities prior to operation. So what we need to do is we need to stop the strategic plan aligned with our mission and vision. We have the mission, we got to work on the vision, the strategic plan a little bit more in depth. Adopt a new policy manual, which we're well on the way to doing. We need to conclude negotiations. In this case, we need to start negotiations and then conclude them. We need to present a budget for approval by the voters, and we've got some time for that. And we need to establish structures and systems for parent community engagement and input at the school level. And we started that with the videotaping with that lady right there. So that was kind of that was an hour and a half that they spent on that, or 2 hours, wasn't it, Peter? Maybe 2.5.
It was a couple hours.
Yeah,
I have a question.
so, yeah.
That last page you just read, is that something I could summarize and post? What the board will be doing?
Yeah, so,
Thank you.
so here's what I'm thinking, folks, is at the next meeting, I'd like to get us all together, and I'd like to put some months up on the wall, and I'd like to start mapping out what we need to accomplish by when. So, and instead of trying to do it tonight, my thought is to have everybody go home early, because it's Thanksgiving week, and think about things that we need to do to become a new school district, and to actually operate a school. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? Okay, so in preparation for that, I did something very fun.
Okay.
So I got some extra copies of this too, if you folks want. I got one, I think. No, I got a couple.
Thank you.
Here, you know what, can we give one to Peter and one? Look, yeah. So what I did was, this Act 46 Study Committee findings, this is from the report that we submitted to the state, and this has our articles. So, remember though, this included Marlboro, so some of this may look a little funny. So, with respect to each town's local identity, we envision a unified school district that will represent how the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. By sharing resources and talents, we believe this alliance can provide students and teachers access to increased educational opportunities and improved services. So that was our vision that we went into with the study. And that was something that was, I remember, decided in the back room back there. Like the last night, we had to put this together so we could get in time. So the exploratory committee reviewed possible options for unified districts with special attention to the following evaluation criteria. So this is what they said in the report. This wasn't in the articles, but the new structure should strengthen educational opportunities for all students through the region, assure the ability to focus on the needs of the individual student, assure strong community connections, provide the opportunity to function more efficiently, to put more resources into quality and equity of education, and to address taxpayers' concerns, and result in incentives for homestead taxpayers. One of the things that we had discussed quite a bit is during the discussions with the committee, and Dwight could probably weigh in on it, was you know, it was definitely, it was student focused, student and taxpayer focused too.
Right.
Those are, when we make decisions, that's what we need to think about, is how are we affecting those two groups. And I think that's something that we really should kind of try to keep in the forefront as we go through this, is to make it more effective, efficient, better opportunities, and to pay concerns of the taxpayers. So I put in parentheses underneath what page from the report it came from, and I believe the report is on the Wyndham Central site, and it's on the blog, or you can connect to it from Anita's thing. One of the other comments in the report was both the principals and the community agree that maintaining the ability of each school to have its own focus and culture will be critical to any successful union. Because we were combining Marlboro, Dover, and Wardsboro, you know, we knew each school had certain things that were very important to it, and we wanted to not just do away and stamp that all out. Which was on page 5, and I thought this was and Dwight will remember this, the major difference that was 2 schools had world language instruction and 1 did not. And that was part of, we kept using that when we were talking about student opportunity. And again, because it involved Marlboro, that's why there's a total of 3 schools and not just 2. And then during the presentation by the principals committee developed a deeper understanding of the efforts. Teachers developed and coordinate their instructional skills through both school-based and supervisory-based professional development. And it's, remember, the SU is doing more professional development. They've got 5 dedicated days this year for the entire district, which is a first. Yes?
I still have those presentations. Would you like me to put the Dover and Wardsboro one on the current blog?
Yeah, that might be good to update. Parents, community members provide resources and volunteers for both in-school opportunities, expand the curriculum, and away-from-school opportunities that broaden students' experiences beyond their hometowns. After-school programs support and extend the learning day, as well as provide support for families needing supervision of their children beyond the school hours. That was on page 6. And then the focus work in Wardsboro. So this was from the teachers that the principals met with our consultant. They had encore academic skills, let the results above the state average, even for a higher poverty rate than the state as a whole. And Dover has shown consistently high state assessment results. The schools, however, do address the impact of poverty in their instruction and support systems, and that's one of the big things the state's struggling with, is the poverty gap. And I know both Dover and Wardsboro I know Wardsboro was close, and Dover had reversed the gap in a couple testing cycles. The reason there's a bunch of periods is there's more in that paragraph, but it was about Marlboro, and I don't think that's not important now because they're not part of us. And then the most direct plan was with Wardsboro's focus on improving core academic skills. In Dover, the unit designs of the IB program with the intense teacher professional development emphasizes teaching strategies that support all student learning. All schools acknowledge the work needed to make further progress reducing the learning gap caused by poverty. And that's on page 7. And then the next page, community support for each of the 3 schools is substantial. And that's on page 9. And on page 11, 12, one task of the new union board would be to negotiate with the boards of the forming district a satisfactory agreement about assets to be transferred to the new union school district. And it's funny that's in there because, like, I don't know if you remember, but basically anything that the school owns on June 30th transfers July 1st to the new district.
Right.
So the only thing is, I don't know if this means we should have a conversation about reserve funds, because you can use reserve funds to pay down your tax rate.
Right.
And if everybody just empties out their reserve funds, the new district will go into formation without a reserve fund. That's on page 11 and 12. And then the next thing is articles of agreement. So these are actually what was voted on by the voters. So not all of them have to go in there because some of them talk about like which schools are necessary and which schools are advisable. You know, Dover and Wardsboro were necessary and Marlboro was advisable. So Article 1, this is really broad. This was Dwight's. The union board will allow for educational opportunities provided at each school to be extended to all students in the district. That was one of the things that showed there was some opportunity. Page 17, Article 4, transportation. Will continue to be provided in the most cost-effective and safe manner possible by the Wyndham Central Supervisory Union in accordance with transportation policies currently existing or as may be amended in the future. So that is one policy that we need to come up with that we kind of kick the can down the road, but one of the things is that's going to be very important because there may not be opportunity without the ability to move between buildings. Union contracts, we have to honor all pre-existing and individual contracts, and we'll be responsible for developing and negotiating of master and individual contracts beyond the termination date. So my understanding is that both yours and our union contracts expire June 30th of 2019, which will be, the next day will be the start of the new district. And I think the principal contracts all in, and I don't think any of us have any contracts, because you guys don't have any bonds, right? In Wardsboro.
I don't think they were all paid off. I'm not positive, though. I don't think we have any.
I know
We had a
ours are
bond that was
paid off, so
yeah.
I don't think we really have anything. The only thing Dover has is, a lease with the solar company on the solar field. And that's the only thing I think they will extend beyond. So that's something probably we'll have a conversation about. And then Article 6, curriculum alignment. And this is kind of interesting. We agreed that the districts have particular strengths and cultures developed to foster student learning. The purpose of curriculum alignment is to have common goals for student learnings aligned with the state's educational quality standards, not to make all schools exactly the same. And that was one of the things that we really talked about is, we're not gonna be able to paint every room, so every door is the same color as the walls of both the buildings. Oh, program enhancement. The unified board will work towards enhancing opportunities for the benefit of all students in the district, including expanding curriculum, maximizing available technology, and introducing learning procedures or educational programs. The board will ensure that these opportunities are made available to all students in the district. And so that's something that we're gonna have to work on. How are we gonna do that? Article 13, prior to full operation, our initial work includes policy development, a budget for the 2019-2020 year, consideration of offering the voters the option of using a floor vote for future budget adoptions and board member elections. And this was because we had a lot of discussion about voting by Australian ballot. And again, Dwight, I think that's why we were told that You know, you could, the first one had to be voted that way, and we could change it in the future. And Amy did some research on that for us. Transportation, operational procedures, and contract agreements. So those are 5 things that we need to get done before we actually start running the school. And then Article 14, budget, election, and public questions. So I think this was where Andy was getting some of his information. Our FY20 budget is to be presented by Australian ballot on town meeting day, March 5th, 2019. The vote will be conducted by Australian ballot, and we have to combine the total votes in the member towns. So that looks like when Andy was talking about, you know, they have to put them both together and then count them, so you don't know which one came from which town.
Is this different than the statutes, or is this?
No, this was what we put in our articles.
I
So
know
this
the
one-
articles, but,
Well, yeah, I mean, I think this is what we have to do for the first one,
okay,
because it's in the article, but I think we can, you know, Andy gave us an outline on how to amend that.
right.
So I think that's another discussion, that's why I wanted it on this paper, so that we could then say, okay, well, let's have this discussion when. Election of district board members should be conducted by Australian ballot in each town, with the electorate choosing the members from their town. And questions posed by the Union District electorate shall be decided by floor vote at a duly warned meeting of the unified district for that purpose. And that would be things like, you know, what are we paying for secondary tuition? Secondary school choice, the unified district will pay tuition, so there's really nothing to be done for that, but we do have to make a recommendation that will include the maximum amount to be paid for secondary tuition, and we do have a little difference between Wardsboro and Dover on that. And then school attendance, this was a big one about a process, and I screwed up, subject to got a couple too many letters there. Process and policies for families of students in grade K through 6 will be able to choose a unified district school they will attend, subject to availability of space of the school and grade. Priorities will be given to children attending the school during the prior year and sibling of those children. Those students residing in the town of the school will be denied access to the school in that town. And then the last thing is local participation in policy and budget development. And we need to really provide public opportunities, including holding meetings in different member towns, holding several budget information sessions, sharing information on the board and school websites, and making video board meetings available online, which we're doing. So those were all the highlights out of the articles in the study. So again, my thought process being is that it gives us some list of things that we have to do. And then I know that we all as board members may have items that we want to see brought up and discussed as a group. So for homework for the next meeting, I thought if everybody could come up with anything that's important to them, or that they've heard from the public that we should discuss, that we can bring up. And then there may be things that a bunch of us are thinking of that are either similar or exactly the same. And then I'd like to come up with a calendar so that we can take that first meeting in December in Wardsboro and say, okay, here's what we have to do, and then assign it a time period. You know, this should be done by June, this doesn't have to be done in September, this should be done by March, and, you know, this should be done in June of 2018 or whatever, or for the 2019 opening, so. That was my thoughts. And
Are you talking about an 18-month calendar, a 20-month calendar?
18-month calendar, because we're about 18 months away from opening, right? Well, a calendar to the first day of the new school district, because there's some stuff,
July 1st, 2019.
2019. Does that make sense, everybody? Sir?
With that session, they only went to summer,
I know, I want to kind of
and they had
map
a
out.
pretty full wall.
Yeah, I think we're a lot further ahead of them than they are.
Yeah.
We're also only 2 schools. We're not 5 in a high school. I mean, just by not having a high school, there's, I think, 6 to 12 policies that we don't need to adopt. So that saves us a lot of time.
The other thing was that they divided into 3 learning groups,
Yeah.
and each group separately came up with their calendar items for the timeline.
Yeah, I think that because we're a smaller board, we're only just a 6-member board, I think, and I don't like the word learning
I-
groups, yeah.
I'm just reporting.
I think they were 12-member board, 9-member, How big is their board?
They had about 9, because they
Yeah.
had 3 groups.
Right. You know, we
I think
can
one of
talk
them got
about
4.
that if people want. I know we're gonna have to do, hang on one sec. I know we're gonna have to do a negotiation council, and that usually be 2 to 3 members, to negotiate contract. So, just something to think about. Thank you, sir. Anything else? Peter, you got anything else from?
No, sir?
Okay.
During the last meeting, I asked Bill, why learning groups versus committee, and his answer to me was that if it's a committee, you have to warn the meetings and do the whole legal process, where a learning group is just a group of people.
I still, the law is pretty specific. Any subgroup of any group that's a public body has to warn, take minutes, report back.
Just telling you what Bill told me. So,
Yeah, he said the
And-
same thing at our meeting.
Well, and so I think because we're trying to get stuff out there, if we're doing stuff without warning the meetings, letting people know about it, and creating minutes, then I think we're doing the public a disservice, but.
I agree with that.
I think that was for the purposes of the training sessions.
Right.
And probably the learning groups would become committees when they get official or evaporate. But they were useful in the context of the training.
Cool. Does anybody have any thoughts on that from the board?
I see it as a committee, because we're gonna be really interested in these 2 committees in particular about attendance and transportation, where you see we might need to meet outside of the regular board
Right.
to just be able to have that time. And so we really wanna hear back about what's going on, who's attending, and make sure that people know where they are, so.
And you want the public there. I mean, these are big issues. You want as many
Exactly.
people there as you can have there, as much input as you
Right.
can possibly get.
And, I think we're really trying to do everything we can by, saying no major decisions we made unless, we discussed it in both buildings and, moving around, and then, we've hired people to get us our information out. Peter does a great job with the minutes. Sometimes they're almost per word what was said. So, any other thoughts from anybody? Peter, any other things I kind of missed on that quick Vermont School Boards Association thing?
You've pretty much got it covered. Their facilitators are officers of the VTSBA. And by the way, if you call it the VTSBA, you'll find it quicker. The thing about the learning groups was they had 3 very distinct categories to think about. And so having a small group focus on one thing and another group focus on transportation was great. When they got to putting it on the calendar, they were pretty much making a Gantt chart. And it was impressive. The only thing I didn't like about it was you couldn't read anything they scribbled on the sticky notes.
Yeah, so I was planning on just bigger sheets of paper and getting somebody you could write nicely.
She compiled all that stuff later on.
Yeah, I'm not writing it if you want to be able to read it. That's why I'm pointing at Karen. Okay. Is there anything else we need to discuss tonight? Has everybody got a chance to look at the minutes I passed around?
Yes.
Sure, excellent.
Yeah. So this one, I think we've covered all that.
The first one, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I think that one, I forgot to bring that up on me, but I'll do that in the first. So listen, folks, there's a couple things we had on the agenda that we made up that didn't go out. Communications with Doug, but we talked about building and engineering studies, and we're gonna have a discussion on that. Did you get to talk to the Wardsboro board?
I did. They're interested in it, and they had some questions about paying for it and that kind of stuff. They understood it. They understand the idea of having it done now makes sense to them. So if you guys present something to them, they vote on it. They weren't sure whether or not we had to give it to them to vote, or in other words, do they need to vote to? There's nothing really to vote on. In other words, that you guys are making a recommendation, which I told them about the recommendation. transportation.
Well, they'll need to spend the money.
Right,
Yeah.
so they don't know the cost, they can't really vote on it, but they were amenable to the idea of doing it amongst their boards. I don't know how you guys approach
Are
it
you,
in Dover.
you were good with that, right?
I was, yes.
And Laura was good with that, so I would say the Dover board would do whatever, because three of them, the members of the current board are on this board, so it makes it a
Yeah.
little easier. So maybe what we'll do, Dwight, is let's put together a proposal to be voted on
Okay.
at the next meeting by this group to make a recommendation. Here's the group we'd like to use, and here's the amount it costs.
Right.
And then,
What it's gonna cover.
right, and then that way, if we know it's gonna work for what we need, it's more for us than
Yeah.
it is for the new board.
Okay.
And then transportation discussion, we talked about, again, forming a learning group or subcommittee to look at that, because we felt that was gonna be a big topic, and then the building, which building you go to. So let's put that off, and let's bring that up, let's kind of give that a spot on the chart for when it's gotta be done, and then we can explain to people. Because I think that's definitely something that doesn't have to, if that goes off till next year this time, we're sort of, it'll have to be
Might take
before
that.
budget. So probably, by September, if they could have that done, so we can set that off, and it may not seem as intimidating to people to know that it's not gonna be like 6 meetings a month, That could maybe meet once or twice a month for a few months and get that done.
And there's plenty of stuff on here we can go through anyway.
Right.
We went through tonight, so.
Yeah, so I think.
Put it on that chart.
Right, I think then that will really help us as a group, so even if, like you and I aren't there, everybody can still continue, because we know what we're trying to accomplish that month.
Sound good? Sounds good.
Okay, and then building and grounds, I think. Wyndham Central is we discussed at the Wyndham Central meeting about buildings and, building grounds and transportation person.
Maybe one person, or is that two?
No, a person, it would be one person would cover transportation, buildings and grounds.
Okay.
And it would be like a cabinet position, one of Bill's cabinet members. And what we talked about was, because some schools just do it all in-house, like Wyndham, as an example, at the meetings, they take care of all their own transportation and building, they don't involve Wyndham Central. We use the discussion about in Wardsboro how, your new principal's first month was learning all about water systems, as
Right.
was our principal's first month in his second year all about water tanks. And it was, a lot of work, so I actually asked Matt to kind of give us how many hours he spent on that, and it was a significant amount of time. Where if there was a buildings and grounds person, that would have been handed off to them, and all Matt would have been responsible for was communicating what he wanted communicated to the parents and the staff. So Bill, Selena Romo from Marlboro, who served on the committee with us, is the head of kind of a miniature study committee that involves the 3 people from the Building and Grounds Learning Group of the West River, which is Drew Hazelton, the chairman, who's the chairman of Leland and Gray?
Oh, yeah.
John,
Chairman of
Leland and Gray.
Principal?
In high school.
Yes.
Tebow?
No, he's the
That's a principal.
Right.
Yeah,
Who's the chairman of
that
Oh,
the West River Board?
Winrich.
Yeah, Joe Winrich. Drew, and who was the third one on that committee? Peter, do you remember?
No.
There's another person who's on the committee, I have it written down
On
somewhere.
buildings and grounds?
Yeah,
Oh, I thought that was Selena.
no, not from Wyndham Central, from the West River Group. Who was that third member of the Building and Grounds Learning Group?
Oh.
It doesn't matter, they
Might have
have,
been-
there's 4 people, we assigned,
Might have been Kelly.
yeah.
What's the purpose of the committee?
The group is to look into, should Wyndham Central employ a building, grounds, and transportation person?
The building administrator spend an inordinate amount of time
Right.
on
Yeah, there's,
in the
Right.
grounds, and it's not what they're expert in.
there we go, that's the background.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at it, is because some schools in Wyndham Central don't wanna participate, is maybe doing it as an agency fee. So what the cost would be, and then which schools are interested, because we don't vote the agency fee budget at Wyndham Central until after town meeting. So it's something that they can work on over the next couple months, and if you, you know, at your town meeting, you could adopt, you can amend the budget to include that if we wanted to. So I think we're all good. If there's no other discussion, I've got the minutes. Does anybody have an issue with the minutes?
You just corrected the spelling of Anita's name.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
couple people on the list of attendance who weren't there.
Yeah, what I think he did was he moved the Wardsboro board up. So Peter, just on the minutes, I made a note, you've got the board wrong.
Oh,
You've got you've got David Scar and Mike Cusick instead of me and, Laura was at that meeting too, wasn't she?
Yes.
Yeah, me, Laura, and Carrie were there too.
I will correct that.
And other than that, I thought they looked fine. A correction in a spelling. 2, under communications, you spelled Anita's last name wrong.
We didn't do that. It's Nick.
Your name is what?
Nick.
You're not Mac?
I'm not a Mac, I'm a Mick.
How'd you get to be Mac so many times?
I think because you named me Mac, which was totally fine.
I went to a lot of trouble to find out, and I found out the wrong stuff.
Yeah, that's okay. It did
I
not-
apologize.
Where is it?
You know what, it's in all
All
the
the
minutes. Yeah.
It's in all the minutes, because I knew that was right.
I'm sorry.
That's all right, it's not something that bothers me, so. But I
Very
figured
thorough
since
minutes
you're
to get back in.
bringing it up to someone else's.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Wow. Sorry, Terry.
It's all right.
He wasn't at the Wardsboro meeting, so I gotta do that.
Did I miss building engineering studies?
Yeah, we just discussed the building and grounds and transportation person at Wyndham Central. That was part of that discussion.
Oh,
So, if we got nothing else, I'd like to ask for an executive session on a contractual issue, and that would end the meeting. So our next meeting after that would be December 4th at Wardsboro. Dwight, can you make sure that we got somebody's there to let us in?
Yeah,
Dover, we're gonna have our Dover meeting. at
close one
6.
the last time around. You guys get
7
in
o'clock.
alright?
Pardon?
You get in okay last time?
Yeah.
Anita, could I get your email address to send you those policies?
Yeah, 7 o'clock.
You guys meet at what time?
We'll meet at 6.
6.
Yeah, anything that you think I can throw on there, the more content, the better.
Great.
So yeah, you get I tell you what, the policies, there's like 50 of them.
Yeah, the policies, I mean, seriously, I had to put them in a big binder
Well, we
clip.
talked about that at the Wardsboro meeting, the policy. They didn't even realize, the board, that there were so many locations.
Yeah.
They started going on for so long.
See, and that's one of we talk about that as being the institutional things, like Rick having done it for so many years, he knows that, and if you get
Right.
old, you know, when,
They didn't even realize, they're like, we do, they didn't know.
are you
Whether or not
doing
they changed that, I don't
Well, they're
know.
probably
Pardon?
Are
don't
you
right
doing
now.
an executive session now?
yes, for contractual, so can I get a motion to move into executive
A
session
motion to have us move into an executive session
for contractual issues?
for contractual issues.
So Carrie MacDonald,
Nick?
Nick,
McDonald, I'm
he's a
sorry,
Mick.
MC, not
MC.
Yeah, it is MC.
And then, second,
Second?
Dwight seconds it, and it's at whatever time, 8:03, 8:05. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.